now going to move on to a really fundamental concept of programming, which is variables. I'm going to start off with creating a variable called box. And I simply just type the name that I want to use that variable, and then I'm going to say box equals 4. Now, all that's happening here is I've created a box and I'm putting 4 inside that box. It doesn't seem particularly useful at the moment, but we'll see why it is as time goes on. I could now say I want to write whatever is stored in box to the text window. So text window.writeLine, as we did before. Ooh. And I would like to write what is stored in box. Now, we learned in the last tutorial about printing and how we can print numbers because the computer understands numbers. However, the computer doesn't understand words. Now, in this case, we've got a word. However, it's more than a word. It's a variable. And because we've created box by saying box equals 4, it says, okay, well, now I understand it. So we can simply type box in here. And you'll notice it comes up in the autocomplete tool. I can hit enter to finish typing that in, close my brackets, and this will do two things. It will store 4 within box, and then it will write whatever is stored in box. So if we run that program, it simply writes 4. Notice that without this line, if we delete it, when we run the program, it appears to do absolutely nothing. It just stores the number in there, but nothing actually ever happens. Whereas this is the line that actually writes what was stored. But this line just doesn't do anything that the user can see. We could take this a little bit further. Let's ask the user what their name is. So because it's going to be a string, something the user doesn't understand, the computer doesn't understand, we'll say, what is your name? And we're going to follow that by getting an input from the user. So I can say, again, it's going to be from the text window, but now I need to do something different. And the one I'm going to want to do is read. I want to read what the user types. So text window.read reads a line of text from the text window. This function will not return until the user hits enter, which just tells me that once the user's typed something, they need to press enter. Now, if we run that on its own, all you'll see so far is it does say what is your name, and then it just waits for the user to type something. So I can type in Tom in here, just nothing happens. The first problem is we really want to store the name that the user writes within a variable so that we can use it elsewhere. To do this, I'm just going to say box equals whatever the user types in. This is very, very similar to earlier on when we said box equals a number, but instead of just telling it exactly what we want, we just say, well, accept whatever the user types in. Now again, this will just simply store what the user types in, but won't actually do anything with it. So lastly, we could say we'll write it back to the user exactly what they wrote to us. So text window.writeLine, and we want to write box. What is your name? My name is Tom. And then sure enough, it wrote Tom back to me. There's one last thing I'd really like to change about this, and that is that the box variable doesn't seem like a very good name for a variable. Variables can pretty much be any word you like. Occasionally in a programming language, you'll have predefined words that the language might use for other things. For example, it might not allow me to use text window as a variable name. I actually think it might do, but in some languages it may not. So in this case, I'm actually going to call it name. So I'm going to say that name equals text window.read because I'm storing a name. So it's just a better variable name. And I double clicked on box, which is another really useful tool. It just highlights the whole of a word. And I'm going to replace that with name. Notice as I start typing, the autocomplete now recognizes that I've created a variable called name, and if I hit enter, it will autocomplete that for me. And again, if we run this, we type in our name and it rewrites it back to us.